Hello, and thanks for being with us here on the New Life Show, a series of talks with Rav Dr. Michael Laitman. Hello, Rav Laitman. Hello, everyone. Hello, Nitza Mazoz. Hello. Today, we'd like to talk about the rational approach versus the somewhat less rational approach. We'd like to use the Hanukkah in order to confront the Greek approach with the Jewish approach and see what insights can we take for our life here and now. Be with us. It's going to be fun. Nitza, please. Yeah, so the Greek approach, and Greece in general, contributed greatly to human development, and especially the development of the West. It maybe even laid the infrastructure for a way of thinking. To this day, the way we think, our paradigms, even the definitions we use to this day originate from Greek. So actually, when we look at the West today, we see that the entire process of thinking, decision-making, common sense, logics, everything's based on rationale, and it's something which is truly respectable, meaning the whole scientific approach. All of these things, they're based on rationale, things that you can measure, explain, things that our mind can grasp. And everything which isn't, it remains in the gray area, which is sometimes perceived as something a bit delusional, imaginary, mystical, something which is a bit less distinguished in Western culture. So we can really look at the Greek approach from many, many aspects, because Greece brought also aesthetics and beauty and competition and many other things. But today I'd like for us to focus on the psychological, rational aspect based on the rationale and noetic approach introduced by Greece. And against that, there is the Jewish approach, let's call it the Maccabee approach, which is not that much of a rational approach. It's abstract, it's spiritual, you can't really explain it, it's hard to give examples for it in our physical reality. How does it or doesn't it work? And therefore, we're actually maybe since then and until now are coping with two attitudes that it's really hard to see how do they coincide. And in general, how do you make place for an approach which is seemingly irrational? How can you respect it maybe? So what we would like to ask you, Rav Laitman, is how would you define or explain the Maccabee Jewish approach versus the logical Greek noetic approach? People started asking themselves, what is the meaning of life? Well, first of all, it started from ancient times, but the first one who discovered the meaning of life, the purpose of life, was called Adam. It was a person who lived among all other people, and 5,770 years ago, and from that day on which he discovered the meaning of life, the purpose of life, his philosophy, his attitude towards life, and that day is actually the start of the Jewish calendar of the people of Israel. And we call his day of discovery Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, a new beginning. This is our New Year, our holiday. And he discovered that we live in a reality, a certain reality, the way we perceive it in our five bodily senses, or one might say our animalistic senses, because by body we also belong to the animalistic world. And our senses are limited, and we can extend them, meaning to build additional senses beyond our senses, that scientists are already talking about it today, about an additional, broad, special reality which exists beyond a certain boundary of our perception, he discovered it. And he said that it's not about reality, that we don't see well enough or hear well enough, but that we have to change our perception on the inside, the perception of where we are, meaning we're in a very broad, extended, complicated reality, consisting of many discernments, but we grasp only a very small aspect of it through our bodily senses, like all other animals. And if we change our attitude, our approach, we will grasp a reality which is beyond ours, which also exists, but we don't perceive it. What's the difference? The difference is that the reality which we perceive to this day consists or is completely based on our natural egoistic perception, the way we perceive things right now, what I hear, what I see, what I smell, what I feel. I perceive all this inside my will to enjoy, my so-called will to receive, which differentiates me from everything, and I constantly examine how do I enjoy all these things, and I examine that which I enjoy, and instinctively, or not instinctively, but deliberately, to reject all those things which I do not enjoy or even suffer from. And therefore, this work, where I'm constantly filtering reality, which is right here, and I don't feel it. It includes worlds and distances and universes and more, but I filter it through my percepticle, which is the will to enjoy. What I enjoy, I perceive. What I don't enjoy, even before I feel it, it's cut off from me, and I don't take it into consideration. Therefore, our world, meaning the world that we feel, the fragment, the part of the sum total of reality, is very small, narrow, in accordance with what we want to enjoy, and only. There are people who want to enjoy more, there are people who want to enjoy less. When our will to receive ends, we feel death. But all in all, it's with respect to my will to enjoy. And in it, we're truly limited. This is what we perceive. We have small animals, bigger animals, plants, the still, the whole universe, it's still, which have an even smaller will to receive than people, and therefore they perceive reality in a more limited fashion. And there is a new perception, and this is what Adam discovered, who we call Adam Rishon, Adam the first. First being that he was the first to discover that there is a reality beyond ours. Truly, like Einstein, this is how he approached reality. He found out that it's possible to change our perception from filtering everything for my own benefit to filtering everything for the benefit of others. It's something that no one thought about before him. He simply took the opposite approach. We don't know what we're lacking, but if we have a certain approach where I aim everything for my own benefit, can I aim my perception not for my own benefit, but for the benefit of others? What will I feel then? if I'll abstain myself from all that which has to do with my own pleasure, is it possible or not? But what will I do? Suppose I take my friend's desire, suppose I take Oren's desire, and I filter everything there is for his benefit. I give everything to him for his pleasure. That's called love thy neighbor as thyself. Just like to this day, up till now, I absorbed everything that's good for me and I rejected everything that's bad for me. Now I'll do it the other way around. I'll do what's good for him and I'll try to distance what's bad for him, meaning I'll as if serve him. What will I feel then? This is truly... What does it have to do with the rational approach we talked about? Wait a moment. It's a very rational approach. It's a scientific approach. It's a very special approach that only now we're starting to discover the need for it. And then, as a result, he discovered a new reality. Meaning, the fact that I'm working on someone, I'm starting to come out of my own limitations and seeing a reality which is unlimited by me, but it is already felt in his will to enjoy, but by my will to delight him, my will, my so-called will to bestow. And then he remains limited in what he enjoys or doesn't enjoy, but I'm no longer limited. I look at reality outside of myself. I came out of my cage, out of my cell, and then I see a new reality. And this is a reality which doesn't work according to the laws of my limitations, the 6 directions or 3 directions, suppose, width, height, length, time, place. It is a reality which is even above Einstein's approach, because Einstein's theory of relativity relates to our reality, space, time, and motion. And here I'm above space, time, and motion, above his perception. And this attitude which Adam Harishon discovered, he explained it in his book called Raziel HaMalach. Malach, it's an angel, meaning a force, and Raziel, it means sod, secret, so the hidden force. He discovered that the entire reality around us is one force, which we don't feel, but we feel the different phenomena that occurs within our will to enjoy. And when I come out of myself, by my will to bestow, by my desire to come out of myself, I start feeling that force that's outside of us, without making different changes and limitations on it on my behalf. And that force is called the upper force, because it sustains the whole of reality. And it exists. And we, inside it, perceive only a bit of our existence, our liveliness. And Adam, he started teaching this method. And he taught 20 generations of his students until Abraham. Abraham got some of it, but he made a great addition to Adam's method, because he already lived in a society in ancient Babylon that has reached a big crisis. We talked about it many times on our talks. And then many people were frustrated. What did we come to? Why can't we get along? Why did we suddenly start fighting? What's going on with us? We have to get rid of our ego. What do we do about it? Abraham, he collected those people who felt that their entire source is their ego, and he explained to them how to come out above their ego, above their desire, above the egoistic perception, the filtering of the broad, infinite reality that there is, filtered by a person's small, limited, narrow will to receive, to enjoy. And the people which he collected, they grasped it according to the code of love thy neighbor as thyself, because it helps me to come out of myself onto the, let's call it, outer body reality which exists. And the people that succeeded reaching this new perception of reality under the rule of Abraham, he called them Israel, meaning those aimed at the revelation of this new reality, meaning that we penetrate through our body, through our cage, into the feeling of the true reality that exists, and we only have to switch the method through which we perceive. Instead of the egoistic kind of perception we had before, let's exchange it for the altruistic method of perception. And this is how this group lived for many years. And afterwards, they started developing more and more. What does it mean to develop? Because I built an outer perception of reality by rising upon my internal perception of reality. And the more my ego grows and draws me to feel more and more on the inside, I rise above it, and then, as a result, I feel the greater and greater distances outside of me. And why does the ego constantly grow? That's the law of nature. We see how ancient Babylon plunged into the egoistic crisis because the ego grew, and since then until now it's constantly growing, and today we're also in the global crisis because of the ego which developed in each one of us, and it also, let's put it this way, enveloped into a big global egoistic ball. And what happens is that the more ego grows, the more we can rise above it and come out of ourselves and see and feel greater and greater distances, feel a greater reality, meaning it's good that we have an ego, and it's good that it grows, but we have to come out of it more and more. And therefore, when the ego grew to a great extent, called Pharaoh, this is how the ego is called, then the people of Israel, the group of Abraham, got a special method how to rise above the ego, meaning no longer according to what Adam HaRishon discovered, and no longer according to the method of Abraham, which was no longer enough. They got a method called the Torah, meaning that there's a certain force which we can evoke, and it will help us rise above the new level of ego that we got during the so-called Egyptian exile. Afterwards, they corrected the ego so much that they have reached a level of perception, of the external perception called the land of Israel, where they started discovering the external world upon the ego and the inner world in a way called the land of Israel. And what you discover there is the upper force. And then the land of Israel, and the upper force that they start discovering more and more, of course, as a result of their connection through love by each one coming out of his own ego and connecting with others. Then it's called the people of Israel in the land of Israel. And afterwards, the ego rose even more, and they started falling. They could no longer overcome the new perception of reality, of coming out of themselves. Furthermore, they couldn't, and they fell into their ego. That's called falling into exile. And here, inside the situation, they discovered forces that keep them inside the egoistic approach, and they yield to them, except for a few qualities, strong qualities left in them that are still connected to that external altruistic approach called the Maccabees. And they started fighting within themselves between the altruistic approach of the Maccabees against the egoistic perception called the Greeks, and they succeeded. They did. And for some time, they truly came back to this external kind of perception, the broad, infinite, actually true perception of reality. And afterwards, the ego grew once again. And instead of the Greeks, what revealed in them is the so-called Romans. And this brought them to such a dispute between them, which they could not overcome, and they fell. They surrendered to the egoistic, narrow perception. And that is called that the people of Israel went into the final long exile of the 2,000 years. But still, among us all, there were single individuals in each and every generation which developed this external kind of perception of reality called the Judaistic approach, the true Kabbalistic approach, and this is how we lived until now. And now, today, this Greek perception, inner perception, has reached its end. Today we can no longer remain in it because we see how it kills us, destroys us. And of course, as a result of this, as you call it, rational approach, we developed a lot of science and medicine and family and technology and culture and education and everything, but eventually it brings us to collapse because there is a limit to how much we can internally perceive and develop instead of developing externally. Because we're reaching such an egoistic development where we can no longer stand each other. And then we come to a very big crisis. A crisis in which everyone hates everyone. Countries hate each other. Nations hate each other, and the world is in a true great crisis where all that it developed according to the Greek method in these past 2,000 years, everything is working adversely against us, and now we discover it. It neither gives us happiness, nor health, nor prosperity, nor anything, and we don't know where we exist. We only say, from the point of view of science, that probably beyond our world there is another world with new dimensions, but actually we don't have anything. We had the space program, we had different things, we thought about flying, about this, about that, but eventually everything's closing down and the person wants to shut his eyes and not open them. And therefore, after all of this rationalism, today we're returning to the Kabbalistic approach that We have to correct our perception, to come out of ourselves by keeping the rule of love thy neighbor as thyself, by which I come out of myself. It is a means to come out of myself, and then I see outside of myself, outside of my inner introverted perception, I see this external perception, extroverted perception outside of myself. In it I see a new world, a great, limitless, eternal, and whole world, perfect world, where we truly, truly can exist. And therefore, all in all, our entire limitation is only in our perception of reality, where in this small, limited perception of reality, we also feel ourselves existing in a very narrow range of life, in a very small place, very miserable, whereas in the new perception of reality, we're limitless in time, perception, space, not limited at all, and everything is ahead of us. So the time has come that finally the Greeks wither away, and the Maccabees, the Kabbalists, among the people of Israel, can open this method to the people and then to all of humanity. Because we have to come back to that place from where Adam Rishon started and open the true kind of perception for everyone. That is actually the entire difference between the Greek and the Jewish approach. Rav Laitman, that was really interesting. Time flies when you're having fun. Unfortunately, our time's up. We have many more questions, but we'll leave it for our next show. Thanks for being with us. Thanks, Nitza. Thank you for being with us. Till next time, all the best.